Hey guys, how you doing there? I'm looking absolutely fantastic today, I must admit. It's been a fucking funny day. It's go to use the washing machine breaks down. Go to use the shower doesn't break down. That's why I look like Jack Nicholson on fucking crack. There's just such a strange energy when you're in Christchurch, and I was talking about this with my sister today, and I just said, I go all around the countryside and I saw people and I'm just hitting this wall here, and I couldn't figure out what it was, and then an outcome hit me. It's like, normally when I'm doing things, I'm quite an intuitive person, and I've learned to listen to the intuition. I can't hear my own voice in Christchurch. It's like a white noise there. And I know that sounds really esoterical and da-da-da-da, but that's just, as I said, if you don't want to take that as a literal, and you just want to take that as I'm speaking metaphorically and I'm speaking about my gut, I just can't sense my guts in Christchurch. There's something just not right here. I think there's actually been like 3 murders in Christchurch the last 2 days. The weather's really, really peculiar. Every morning it starts off really fine, then it's just getting either humid or muggy or super cold, and it's just, everything just sends my spidey senses. Speaking of which, so I thought I'd come and just do a little bit of video, because again, I'm trying to get things done. I went to use the camera bloody powers off, So, while I was doing that, I thought, well, I'll just come in here, I'll use the camera on my computer, and I log on to the computer in the library, and of course I picked it up as I walked through the door, and I went, of course, this actually is the Linwood Eastgate Shopping Centre, which actually also includes the Labour offices. So we've got one of the Christchurch events occurs pretty much within 100 yards of the Labour office. It's got the email system, as you notice, when you get connected onto the Wi-Fi system. It's got parliamentary systems on it, but there's also another system in there which I've noticed, which says hidden networks, which is like, So I'm actually going to get all of this anyway. And speaking of which, that's sort of when I walked around Christchurch the other day, and as I'm going through over the next week or so, I've got a few little places I'm going to go and take you all and show you some interesting stuff. But things like I've already talked about was the justice, I call it the Justice Palace, but the court where Brenton Tarrant was tried. Prior to that, and I think I even did my little blurb on that before the Christchurch event, but I got picked up by a person who pretty much confirmed to me, and I won't say too much because I don't want to come back on him, but they actually helped. There's a Five Eyes spine cubicle in that area. So every time you walk into the courts, everything on your computers, your iPhones, if it's any smart-based technology, then they'll just walk straight in and they can read everything that you've got. So they're setting the game up before you've even walked through the door. So 1080, you've got stuff on your computer and you're an activist. Not anymore. They know it all now. That sort of stuff. So not very just at all, really, very unnatural justice. Then you have things like, you're in the Christchurch Cathedral, and you're looking there, and the place is just like destroyed. And you sit where it is, that's the heart of Christchurch, and you sit there and you go, okay, so we saw that's the tip of the spear, and we kind of work our way in as an inverse spear. So let's say the tip of the spear is out towards the Tasman Ocean, and this is the shaft. The Christchurch Cathedral is the shaft where the beginning of the arrow and the arrowhead meet. What you basically have is at that tip end. Yep, so just a little message came up there. In fact, everybody seems to be talking to me today. At that tip end, which is the Tasman end, you've got the Hop 1 boys, which basically switched off just before the 2004 Christchurch. They had 2 experiments, Hop 1, Hop 2. I think it was Hop 2, Hop 1, don't quote me on that, but I do remember thinking it was literally about a day or so before that, switched off before the Indonesian tsunami, during which there was magnetic anomalies and the fireballs and all the things that we learned to associate in the investigation that was held in Australia, which predated the one that was held in the United States by Senator Sam Nunn, as to whether or not the fireball and simultaneous earthquake that occurred in May 28th, 1993 was actually caused by the cult Sharinko, who released the sarin gas in Tokyo and had bought a farm in Australia in Laverton, the Laverton Royal Australian Air Force Electronic Warfare Station. They bought a farm 35 days before this event occurred, which was ground zero at the farm, the earthquake, but the fireball went off over Perth, and basically the Arkansas coordinated meant that the two matched up, and of course led the Australians to actually have an investigation into this. They were actually keeping the cult under investigation from the moment they got there, and the reason why we know this is that because Christine Chammer actually brought it up in Parliament prior to the attack in Tokyo, where she said, Christine Chammer, Greens, Western Australia, and she said to Nick Bolkus, who are these weirdos bringing in strange scientific equipment and chemicals in hand shampoo, and why are we not throwing them out of the country instead of giving them $50 slap on the head? And Nick Bolkus, turned around, Minister of Immigration, said, I think you're very mistaken about that. We'll look into it. And of course, we never heard anything until the cult occurred. And at that point, we've discovered that and this is again, I spoke to Christine Chammer, and she said, well, basically her sources were the Australian customs officers who were very annoyed about what's going on, and they'd been told by the Australian Federal Police to, if you want to keep your job, mate, you better just shut up and do as you're bloody told. And that's what they did. Well, apart from Christine, who then brought it up and da-da-da-da. So those sort of symptoms that we saw in all the testimonies that occurred, where the result was that it was inconclusive. We never actually discovered one way or another what the deal was. It is interesting when you go in to look at the politics, how different agencies have started backtracking, and there was attempted to smear Henry Mason, who was the chief person who brought us all to our attention. But I remember talking about this with Vinny and saying that the original documentation on this event and talked about it was the Sam Nunn had his inquiry. He then held a symposium at Georgetown University on weapons of mass destruction. William Cohen was the key speaker, and he turned around and said, there are now people out there that can trigger volcanoes, earthquakes. I mean, it's one of the very well known. Just go William Cohen, Geo-engineering or Geo-warfare, and it'll come up. But the point was, originally when I read it, and I was saying to Vinny, was it actually had the word cult on the original speech that had been released. But after I did my speech on the radio show with Vinny Eastwood, that actually got taken out of the literature. Can't prove it, so just that's the way it is. Learn screen save everything these days, because we're learning more and more. It's not just that they can control who gets to speak and how far their neck gets cast, but they can also take stuff off, and they can even increasingly delete and play around with it. So moving all back to Christchurch, we saw the events that the fireballs that occurred in Christchurch mimicked the events that we saw in Western Australia, then in Indonesia. The point of reference we see goes Hop 1 out between Christchurch and Chatham Islands. Then the next stop basically is along as you're heading towards that spear shaft in the cathedral, is you've got the research vessel Tangaroa parked in that same lineage there, and it's relaying scientific material, and it had a Japanese crew on board, and they were actually shooting, they had the satellite directly pointed at that area. So when you're watching the 6 o'clock news, all those lovely little infrared footages, now you know why. That's where they got the material from. At the time, even pre-public source material, open source public material, they were talking about the fact that they were doing research into whether or not they could detect earthquakes by studying the Hikurangi flow below, and just incidentally slipped in like, and it'll help us find oil too. Whoops, daisy. That experiment, I think there's many ways that HAARP can actually be utilised now. I think that's a lot of what we're going to see at Rocket Lab at the moment. I'll get to that in a second. But what I think they were doing in that particular case was they were creating an arc bridge, and I've read the scientific papers, and I'm damned if I can find them. So again, my message to you today is screen save, screen save, screen save. But they were creating an arc bridge where they basically, through ground stations on the ground, stimulate the upper atmosphere of these storms, red sprites, natural plasma when storms occur. They're detected with multi-spectrum lenses, which would normally either be the Hubble shuttle, until things got an issue there that the Chinese blew up a satellite which left shrapnel there, which meant that the space shuttle could never actually go up through the meteorite, up to service the Hubble, because it now had to go for this, thousands and thousands of bits of metal flying, screaming around, and then they had to rely on the Russian Soyuz system and ISS, and that was the end of that. But they also were able to turn around, at that time they had been using the shuttles themselves. That had been one particular way. And of course, in the next step about that was the shuttles themselves actually went boom. And again, when you look at what they were doing, they were studying these sprites at the time. Stan Rogers from Otago University was the person that was actually leading that project. Very, very interesting person. Father's a politician. How do we put Mr. Rogers? Actually, I'm going to think about Craig Rogers. I'll have a think about that one, and if somebody remind me about the name, because I'll forget, and when I find the name, I'll reply on the comments section down below. Always the best thing. If you're not sure about something, just ask me. So yeah, he was studying these sprites at the particular time that it was going through, and if you actually look at the actual report properly, yes, foam was the cause of the space shuttle blowing up, but it actually hit a series of turbulence caused by these magnetic structures, and that's where there's a question about whether it was a natural event, because they had about a 1 in 100 chance of actually popping up if they flew into one of these things anyway, or whether it was an act of sabotage. It was at the time the Colonel Ramon Israeli Air Force, Commander William McCool, all these guys that were on that shuttle at the time, they actually had a background also in basically special weapons or unconventional weapons, and in the Israeli guy's case, he was actually part of the Israeli Defense Forces. Previously, prior to that, had been part of their procurement section, and prior to that, he'd actually been the guy that they picked to run the electronic aspect of the original attack on the nuclear reactor. I think it was the Iranian nuclear reactor. Well, again, that's not the point. The point is that the guy actually had this huge skill set, and he just happened to be in a shuttle that went boom. So, getting back to Christchurch, you had this the Tangaroa. So again, hop 1, recap. Hop 1, hop 2, Chatham Islands, go along the same shaft spear. You get the RV Tangaroa. At that point of the RV Tangaroas, three events were coordinated at the same time, just very much like Christchurch, and I'm starting to get an idea about why that is. One of them was Tangaroa, which was the civil defence exercise, which was actually, it was a year-long exercise, ended on that day. And if you actually read into the paperwork of that, what you actually discover was, well, what they were doing was coordinated so that they were working on the FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's communication system, and coordinated so it all was, all calibrated to being exactly the same, so that it didn't matter that they were working with Washington. So basically they were effectively slipping a bit of US command into our civil defence section, which is not to be surprised, because right now, as I speak to you, they have taken over all the electronic communications which relay for the military, for when we have guys in Burnham want to speak to the people in Afghanistan. That's now controlled by the Americans. Our airways is now controlled by the Americans, and that again goes back to when they were flying these big planes in the Sofia. That's Sierra Oscar India Foxtrot Alpha, the big Boeings, weather studying atmosphere. It's got New Zealand Air Force, all sorts of big boys there. But that flew in, and the same day it flew in, the Christchurch entire New Zealand airway system or traffic control went crash. And then you see the big microdrive on these things. You go, yeah, it wouldn't be hard. You just flick that thing on, it's going to fucking fry everything for fucking Africa. And so these guys stepped in, and so they're now doing it. And again, when you're looking at, when we come back to Kaikoura and all these Agenda 21 bureaucracies, you're starting to see that now that actually, no, you can't just fly your aviation plane, your plane wherever you want. We used to be. Now you've got to do scenarios, because these are set up for drones, command, and they're creating these restricted areas. And at the same time, when groups get together to actually involved in that, the top guy just mysteriously has an accident. That happens. But in the case of going back to Sofia, so yep, they took over our communication section, and that'll do. I'm sure the other one will come back, but we'll keep on task. So at the RV Tangaroa, you had the boat research vessel, which has also previously forgot to mention was also itself involved in HAARP researches. So you've got in a row 1, 2, 3. Basic bit of hard physical assets which all relate to the same research program. Then you have this civil defence, which is taking over the coordination communication. Quite often you'll notice there'll be a drill that occurs before these events. My working thesis on that particular one is that what they're doing is they're creating a mask for the fact that there will be a command centre set up, and they'll be communicating at the same time. And so in the event that anything does get overheard, then they can turn around and say, well, actually that was just part of the exercise, nothing to see move along. So it's part of the protocols that we're seeing there. The fact that these work to a certain formula would seem to me that indicate that someone was writing the same book, but that's that's another down the rabbit hole. We'll leave that for another day. So that was the Tangaroa and Tangaroa boat civil defence exercise, and then you had Mahi Tangaroa, which is Maori for big wave. In fact, Tangaroa all means big wave. But Mahi Tangaroa, and again, if I haven't got my pronunciation or my linguistics perfect, feel free to kick my ass, because it's no excuse in this day and age for fucking sloppy pronunciation, and I am a crap at pronouncing things anyway. But so forgive me. I'm not picking on that beautiful Maori language. I'm just a really bad pronouncer. So the third was this Mahi Tangaroa, that was when the USS Samson came in, first time that a warship had been in New Zealand for 34 years since we had declared ourselves nuclear free. Something that this current government, the Jacinda Ardern government, which is one more reason why I just despise them and think that their liberal credentials are absolutely crap. They've turned around and actually invited a B-52 bomber. The B-52 bomber is divided purposely for the purposes of dropping off nuclear bombs. So to invite it in here and make it part of an air show and get everyone go, oh, that's okay. It's just sneaky, dirty little public relations crap. And we're all starting to see through it, Jacinda. We've all had basically enough of you. Well, enough of us are getting into the situation. But anyway, let's keep on track. So the Mahi Tangaroa, USS Samson, big huge electronic warfare ship. It was also used, by the way, to one of the vehicles used for the MH370 aircraft. It's parked, when it first arrives, it's parked at near Great Mercury Island, which is the island that Faye Rich White, who are the people that funded initially the startup for Rocket Lab, that's where they did the initial testing there. They've got a little island right next to there called Red Mercury, which fascinates the hell out of me. Go and look at research Red Mercury, people. You'll be really and it's at that island which has on the map the maritime navigation, permanent research area, keep out, and that's where the ship basically went and anchored up around that area. And then of course the next day after this quake, it came down, waved the flag, all the locals went, yeah, love you, we love the US, yes, and got good PR and But of course at the same time that was going on, you had the fact that you had Lockheed Martin, which is again Mahia Peninsula Rocket Lab, and that's Lockheed, that's in New Zealand, controlling the New Zealand Antarctic program, and it's Lockheed that's controlling the US one via Rathon, which is basically a subsidiary these days of Lockheed. And then of course you've got the Antarctic Centre, which these days, which we'll try and get out there this week if we possibly can, and we'll look at it, and I'm going to try and I've got to keep some of my cards to myself, but the short version is it's got really, really big these days. And of course you've got Lockheed is one of the chief clients, along with Serco, for the company, Australian trunking company that's just bought Blue Bridge, which of course will be linked in through Christchurch via the Kaikoura Highway, which we'll get to in a second. And in fact, I'm sure there's a lot, Lockheed Peter Thiel, like Lockheed's just basically Lockheed deep sea bed mining, which is smartphones, and trying to generate that whole market so that they can have investment capital to actually make it worthwhile, because they don't want to spend their own money, they want to use other people's money. It goes on and on and on. So Lockheed when this occurred, was Lockheed and all the big boys were having a military exercise, and one of my Facebook person, again, if you want to claim credits, I'm not trying to plagiarise, I'm just trying to teach you, but one of my Facebook friends, when I spoke to her, pointed out, went, oh yeah, they would have been sitting there in the little lecture room going, oh chaps, if you just look up here, man, you'll see there's Kaikoura Coast, and no it's not. Want to buy one of these? And that's pretty much what I hadn't thought about it, but I'm like, yeah, that's probably what they were all doing, and same thing, you had the Anodako survey ships in at the time, and again, that was something that we see repeated again and again, which, gets people to turn around and say, oh, he's a nutty conspiracy theorist. Well, actually, I am a conspiracy theorist, totally accept it. I also happen to be a very fucking damn good one, because I do my research, and I am actually not running around looking at things because I want them to be this way. I'm looking at them how they actually are. And if you actually look at my track record, I've got an exceptionally good track record. So, yes, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I just happen to be an exceptionally good conspiracy theorist, or controversial factualist, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. So Mahi Tangaroa, the research ship, Tangaroa, the civil defence exercise, Hop 1, Hop 2, so you're getting, again, asset. And this is so far, we're all just travelling down the spear, we haven't even got to Christchurch yet. At that other aspect that you get is the aspect of the Christchurch Highway, which had to be rebuilt. Massive millions and millions of dollars, actually billions of dollars actually went into that rebuild. 2 weeks beforehand, the CEO turned around and introduced Kaikoura into the Agenda 21 particular initiative. At the same time, the top guy for the, I think it was Next agency, was deployed to Blenheim, and he was meant to be working on wire app or something else, and boom, this came up 2 weeks later. So the people were moving into position, just like other people getting out of town, like the FEMA people and so on that were in Christchurch were getting out, other people were being moved in. So, it's the way I look at this. Is one of my jobs when I was in the territorials for 6 years, my primary call was the Threefield headquarters, Royal New Zealand Artillery, which later became 32E, but I was Threefield headquarters, and I was their artillery intelligence operator. And basically my job is what I'm doing here right now, is I'd go up to the map and I take those little markers of the tank or the truck or whatever, and I go and put them from the big bosses, and I go and put them on our map so that our boss could read the map and know what was actually happening. And of course, because I'm doing it, I got very good at reading maps, which is what I'm basically doing with you today. I'm reading you a map of these are the counters on the risk board that we're seeing, which you probably weren't aware of, but when you put them all, you start to realise that this is a full-scale invasion that we're actually watching, and it's hideous, because the consequences, it's like, it's at least in Normandy with my grandfather, or in fact he was Tobruk, we're going to be quite precise, but they knew they were being shot at. In this situation we don't even know it, but it's the same thing. There are definitely people being killed and casualties as a result of this horrendous, inhuman bit of barbarianism. At Kaikoura, so these occurred, they've moved in, and the locals originally were quite grateful, and fantastic, this is awesome, we're going to have new highways, we're going to be better, and da-da-da-da. Then they started to notice things. These barriers started going up, and the barriers meant that they couldn't go down and get their crayfish. They couldn't go and go fishing. They couldn't go scuba diving. They were being cut off from having an interaction with their own environment and having the lifestyle which they come to live there for, and in which people have been living in Kaikoura, as in their name, Kai, because this is what it's all about, folks. Kaikoura was cut off from its Kai. Yeah? And that's when you're sitting in a room and you've got 50 people in that room all discussing this, and all bringing the power divers, the tourist operators, the national voting farmers, and they're all sitting in a row, and they're all looking at each other, and they're going, you know what, guys, we normally fight like cats and dogs and everything else like this, but we're getting what's happening here, and we're our common enemy, and we're coming to get it. And that is beautiful, beautiful. So thank you very much, Sharon, from Protect Our Coastlines, for inviting me, and that was a great honour. I was really impressed to see you guys. You are the resistance, and I totally got my hat off to you guys. And of course, being the resistance means that you're going to actually be on the front lines and taking the shit hard, good people. So, they were getting cut off, and they started to look at it, and as they're discussing the different things, and they're looking at the way that that nectar's been basically quite deceitful for them, and manipulating, and all the stuff that's going on, which, they start to realise that, well, actually, these guys weren't being as good to us as we were, and there were lots of things that happened during the rebuild which you didn't get to hear about, the rapes and the murders, da-da-da-da. And now that they're all taking notes, they're looking at each other and going, we've been screwed over, And now they're getting active, and that's like, you guys want to, if you think, this is going to happen all around the country, man. They're trying to do their best, but you know what? Once you get the hobbits up pissed off, God help you. You think, there's a very bloody good reason when New Zealand goes to war, we're good at it. We don't like to fight, but when we do, by Jesus, and you're going to have a fight on your hands, and you might even win, and it's like that, and you think, oh, then why do it? Well, guys, why we do it is because it's the right thing. It's about justice, natural justice. We get all so wrapped up sometimes about this all has to be legal and that has to be legal. Fuck that. There's good, there's right, and there's right, and there's wrong. Okay, and that's one of the reasons we do it. And also, to avenge. It's like the movies, and I'm quite serious when I think about myself that way. I'm an avenger, and I'm not out for revenge, and I'm not out to get people. But if I can't actually stop you, then I can at least stand up for the people that you're stomping on. And that's what I can do. And I might be the tiniest, most disorganised, littlest guy out there, and I am. But by God, I'm. This is my country, and you are my people, and I will do everything in my power to defend you. And I make my promise to you on that. And I'm serious. I'm really quite deadly serious. And I do this, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And most of the time, it's like, you get a paper cut. this year has been really, really hairy. And even as I'm talking to you right now, the last week or so, I've had the US State Department, I've had the New Zealand Embassy in London, their naval intelligence person, I've had the supposed public resources person, which is another euphemism for spook, from the New Zealand Embassy in London, all looking at my LinkedIn profile. It's been this year has been pretty hairy, and that I've actually, it's gone from being just a little guy doing the paper shuffling to I'm having to actually drag out some of my field craft. And I'm not I said I'm the smallest Avenger. I'm not the guy that's got the special Hulk ability, so I'm in that way outside of my field, but I'm also quite a cunning little bastard, so I give them a run for their money. Let's get back to talking about why we came here. So that's what's happening in Kaikoura. They also have along that way, there's a series of rivers which are called lahars, or built up mud flows, and some of these are basically create little lakes that are basically supported by shale and silt. In the next big flood, or the next big shake, and again directional targeting, so they're going to be doing a lot of experimentation at the moment. Let's see how accurate we can make this weapon. Let's do this, let's do that. Those things get taken down, and that means that the road gets cut off again, and they can send in more people to put in more infrastructure to rebuild, and they can shut that road, and they can shut down the South Island any time they want. And as we say, this is not just happening in Kaikoura. You look at up at Manawatu, they've had that highway shut down. Mahia Peninsula, that road up there is pretty bloody hairy. There's a series of roads throughout the country which have infrastructure has been allowed to fall into nothingness, and they are designed and said, they can. Cut that down, herd you that way, steer and misdirect, so they've got an agenda, and this is all part of this agenda. Same situation on the west coast, what's happening there, the road between Greymouth and Westport, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when that road gets taken out. When it does, it's going to really, really screw up Westport's tourism industry and their economy, which of course at the same time these places have been, as I'm wandering around the countryside, I went to Blenheim, and everywhere I want in Blenheim, which doesn't actually naturally have a gang, and that's long story itself, but you'll find there's little square point bags for methamphetamine on the street. And this is what you've seen everywhere, and the concentration of these little bags, the closer you get to a place that's got people that have got a reputation of standing up for themselves, they areas with low social economic areas, but that are rich in natural resources, these are the areas that the gangs and the drugs are moving into, which when you actually look at the market forces of it, is again another abnormality that's quite strange that it's going on that way. Again, it's interesting too also the structure of these gangs when you start to look into not so much the white supremacist gangs which do exist, but suddenly we don't talk about the Vikings or Iron Thunder. Yes, Kelvin Alps, I am making reference to you. I said the other day we're not at war. I lied, we're at war, mate. You can't sit there, have a guy wearing a Freemason's mason, taking a photograph of a guy saying, oh, this is my former CEO guy who's taking money from the farmer Solomon Islands for a gold mine. That's pretty bloody dubious. And then expect people to have you be on the side of people writing about Freemasons, CIA and mining corporations, because that's where you're getting your pay. And anybody that's taking money from you is a fool. Your money source is not good. And there's a lot of that going on in small parties. A lot of people are being demonetized online, so they are looking for sugar daddies. And I would say to you, if someone comes to you with a deal, think again. And again, go and see the movie Branded. It again highlights the situation of you can't do that, guys. You cannot take money from the very people that you're actually protesting against. It's not natural justice, okay? So again, when we talk about things like 1080, which I'm probably advancing myself about, my basic official position is I think Sue Gray herself as a person I have absolute respect for. I'm sorry that we've actually had a bit of a falling out, because I think she does sterling work and I'll always endorse what she says. People say, oh no, she's a little lightweight, and going, well, okay, you know me, anybody else out there that's actually taken cases to court, because no one else is. So until someone else comes along, she is in that front our legal avenger. So how to unfortunately, the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, which they're bringing in Social and various other people, they've got people involved in that which are into things like into the big Bitcoin, and they're involved in mining, and I'm not having to go at those guys because I'm doing a paper on that at the moment, and there's plenty of good shit that they're doing. But sorry guys, that money, so you cannot stand up for planet Earth and be taking money from something that's actually exploiting it. And Bitcoin, you make one Bitcoin $4,500. What's what it costs you to make, and then you need energy to do it, and that energy has to come from somewhere, either batteries coming out of Afghanistan or Rwanda, which are of course triggering off wars there, or it's used from water sources, which of course adds to the value of water. And again, the model that we're working with this Gen 2030 is about creating scarcity. But let's get back to our spear. I keep diverging. We're going to make this big move. This is our 60-minute week rant because I've got so much to tell you all. So that's Kaikoura, these big lahas, so they can shut it down anytime they want, and then you get to Christchurch. And now, remember, we keep going back to the original point of the spare tip, and I've said to this way to think of it is that basically the point of the tip of the spear is hop one out towards the coast of Kaikoura, and then the shaft of the spear is the cathedral, Christchurch Cathedral. So if you go and follow those arms actually out, you look at one of those arms and it takes you to the right hand side, so it's like as you're going from Christchurch moving up the island, so that side of the spear, that takes you from basically through Birdling Flats. Now Birdling Flats, originally used during the war, they were looking at actually creating launching rockets from there. Rocket Mahia, Lockheed Martin originally looked at operating from there. I think they probably realised it was actually too accessible and too many people to come and have a look, so they picked Mahia Peninsula, because I went up there last year to actually try and have a look, and I realised that it was a mission itself just to get to that part. So I had to flag that one because it really is out there in the wop-wops. However, the Canterbury University was used Birdling Flats as part of their also the HAARP experiments, and what they were doing there is the HAARP itself, the way it works, and I'm using HAARP in the as a blanket term. There's many actual projects involved in it: Super Dan, Tiger, Georgia Bean, not Georgia Bean, Dinderley, which is in Australia by that Essex place I told you about. But the Birdling Flats one, basically what it's doing is there are two interconnecting beams. One comes from down in the South Pole in Antarctica. Again, if you go and look at the rockets that have been launched from Mahia Peninsula right now, and you look at some of the companies involved, and you go in there, you'll find that they've got this one company which is doing a tracking station, and it's for Antarctica, and it's amazing. It is just like a giant super base, just line after line of these little miniature things, which how they've been powered is another great little mystery, because last time they did that, they talked about putting nuclear weapons in there, not nuclear weapons, nuclear power. And the Russians, and again, don't believe me, go and look up online, but the Russians themselves were doing this, and they ended up having to pull out 1,000 of these things, which have all been basically leaking and causing shit. And so were the Americans, they call radiothermal generators is what they were talking about. So whether these are powered by the same thing, I don't know, but there is some big shit going down. And when they were originally doing it back in the 90s, it was because they were planning on launching these nuclear rockets called Timberwolf, and they were powered by basically nuclear materials like the RTGs, and one of them blew up and they had a 1 in 1,000 chance, which is not that great big a chance. They would kill 5 billion people on the planet. Their plutonium got into the atmosphere. But they were going to fire them things over Antarctica, and with a flight path that went directly over New Zealand, because there's not many people there, and they were tracking them by these things. So that's some of the people that Rocket Lab's working with. And again, when you start to look at the clients, you start to go to the websites, and it's very interesting. Like they'll go, we're doing this, and then they might reference to something, but then you notice they don't actually tell you what it is, and then you have to kind of research the word. So there's a lot of stuff that's all about poking the atmosphere, going down at Rocket Lab with their various clients. My favourite one is a company called QuakeTech, which does, when I talked about the plasma in the sky, that's basically what it's measuring. So it's the best one to say, vindicates what I'm actually saying, because there's this multi-million-dollar company operating out of Auckland University, by the way. So again, with mysterious money, but it's doing what they do at Canterbury University. Where that funding was Canterbury University, but it came from just like the Rocket Lab from the United States Navy and from their Defence Advanced Research Agency. So the second arm, Birdling Flats, which measures basically, it's measuring these two beams that connect from each other, which I make that point back, is you've got the one that was coming from the northern hemisphere, and you've got one that comes from the southern hemisphere, and they interconnect over the Cook Strait Island. And what they're measuring there is the altitude area, because they want to get up to a certain point, and they want it, it's like they get the perfect conditions, then it creates the catalyst situation. So that gives the height side of things. And if you go down the bottom of the South Island, you've got not Birdling Flats, so you've got Aurora Bay, which again was 1900s radio station, sort of military radio station, just like Waihopa, by the way, just slip that in. And why I hope it does a different thing. It goes from angle from direction. It's a directional finder, and it goes from one angle out to the east, which swings round to cross through the deep cove and Haast bound around about the deep cove, which is Doubtful Sound. That's where you had the whale streamings about a year ago. And again, you know, if you coordinate across on the map where these whale streamings occur, the mass ones, there is a direct correlation between these facilities that we're talking about. And nobody in the whaling community wants to hit it because then they won't get money, but that's, you know. The other side of the angle swings around to Macquarie Bay, where there is another relay station there. Just like Aurora Bay, these things prone to actually having fires burst out because there is, you know, some very heavy energy going into these things. So they literally, from time to time, you little, you know, story about that fire, you know, burnt to the ground, or suddenly the ground caught on fire. At these places, and Macquarie Island, that's also where Macquarie Island first detected this electromagnetic anomaly during the Indonesian quake. And when you actually turn around and look at the French, I think it's Demeter satellite service, which was monitoring the Haiti earthquake, and part of the European Union, who have actually had the Americans on and said, well, this actually is 1999 report into HAARP that labels it as a climate weapon. So it's not a theory, that is the European Parliament's official position on what HAARP is. And they asked the Americans to come and talk to them, and the Americans went, oh, bugger off, and but that's where they are. So that swings down to the other side, and what that's doing is that carries the beam. So that's the other one's the height. This is the one that keeps it on track, so it gets it to a very precise connection that you have with your catalyst situation. So that's another little X on the spot. And when you follow the other arm out there, that takes you out to the Widden Gunnery Range, which again, there's some material actually out there, and I'll do ask me about that one. I think it's the most important thing to get me to remind you what the guy's name and project is, because off the top of my head I can't. A lot goes on up there, but I'm not infallible. And so that's he was doing the same thing, measuring all in this, what they call the D level of the ionosphere. And pretty much where that all comes about was because William Pickering, another New Zealand scientist, you go and drive past Blenheim, and you get to Blenheim, and there's a little, Havelock, and there's a little monument there, and he goes, he tells his life story, and he goes, and then he went to war, then 1938, and then it goes blank to 1945. And so for 7 years he did nothing. Wow. Absolute nonsense. He was involved in the military project, like a lot of New Zealand scientists were, and the Manhattan and the various other super weapon programs that were going on. Pickering's key thing was actually basically noting when they let off the nuclear bomb, because he was also the father of modern communications, satellite communications, but when they let off the atom bomb, he discovered that it excited the electrons in the upper atmosphere. So, when you're talking to people and they're going, oh, I don't believe in this HAARP thing, going, oh, well, why not, guys? Do you believe in atomic weapons? Oh, yeah. Okay, so you understand, the atomic bomb, yeah? Okay. Well, this is the atomic bomb 2.0. This is the electron bomb. Okay, and that's what it is. That's as simple as to describe it. HAARP systems are the electron bomb. Second generation, basically, weapons of mass destruction. And once you kind of explain that to people, and they go, oh yeah, I guess we would find ways to make our toys go even bigger booms. So Pickering did that, and he noticed, and that's when all this started. We started getting in, and that was the late 50s, early 60s, and then Owen Wilk comes in the 70s and notices that these different research programs are going on at Canterbury University that are funded by the US military that are all looking at the upper atmosphere, and that included Mount John, where Owen Wilkes actually literally kicks in the door. God, I love that guy. A true adventure. Kicks in the door, takes the photographs, and nobody can do anything about it because he's just caught the Americans literally with their pants down around their ankles, that they've got a secret little room in Mount Job where they're actually carrying out missile defence research. And the university, very red-faced, nobody sent him a bill for the kicking down the door. The police didn't come and knock on his door. They went, oh, oops, sorry, we broke our own chart, or we won't do that again. Until 1980, when Canterbury magazine turned around and busted them again, doing exactly the same thing, but this time they used Pennsylvania University as a front cover. The normal one they use is the National Science Foundation, or the Marsden Foundation. As I said, you remember I told you about Mr. Rogers. He gets a lot of his funding from the Marsden Foundation. You go into his office in the physics department at Otago University, you'll see pictures of him wearing Russian helmets, wearing AK-47s, leaning against IBCM missiles. So then he says, no, I've got nothing to do with the military industry at all. No, not at all. I'm going, would you like a TUI? Would you like a TUI, Professor Rogers? Yeah, right. Just giving you guys a heads up, Wellington railway station has been evacuated and all services are suspended. We are condition red, we are condition red. That's currently at 3:32, and that's on the 3rd of the 10th too, so 3-3-3-2, yeah, okay. 2-2, very interesting. Pay attention to this. I don't even know how big it is, but interesting new neuronics going on there. And sometimes they use these things because it's a coded sequence, so it's not necessarily even they do believe in esoteric, which they may or may not do. I think they do. They certainly, it's an old terrorist trick to use certain dates because then you can code to each other about what's actually the authenticity of something. So yeah, we're going to have to keep going. It's 3:38. I promised you an hour, so you'll get an hour, and then I'm going to find out what the hell's going on there. Okay, so Christchurch, Wedling Flat, and then of course the point of the spear is the Christchurch Cathedral, and of course that sets up the Christchurch Foundation, and the Christchurch Foundation is chaired by the top guy in the Christchurch press. So there's your media side of things. That's Humphrey Wallison, a man that I previously identified as being the director of a security company. In my book, State Secrets, best-selling book, and sold over 15,000 copies in New Zealand. Currently, like many other books in New Zealand, are being ripped out of the libraries like mad and destroyed, as there's a huge information purge going on as they steer us towards using stuff actually only online. And he was head charge of basically run a security company called Minerva, which was used basically, in fact, sorry, correction, S&M Andrews Limited, along with a whole bunch of high-level Navy people, Les Gander, the Minister of Education, Hugh Templeton, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think Sue Woods, don't quote me on that one, and then they had a subsidiary company which was called Minerva, which was basically used for Rhodesian security mercenaries, you know, very white. You couldn't get much more white supremacist if you bloody well tried. Their logo was a gladiatorial helmet with two swords crossed over, which again is this whole Boa and Jacob, the double laurel. It's the same thing all over again, but basically they're the military arm, or the military side of it, and it's actually also a symbol very widely used by white supremacists today. So, you know, I even had Patrick Gower recently on about his joke of a white supremacist situation. He basically turned around and went, yeah, you're right, and they wouldn't say any more, but he knew that he was only allowed to go so far down the rabbit hole. I, on the other hand, don't have that problem, and I'm like saying, well, you know, you want to do a white supremacist situation, why don't you go, hey, why don't we turn around and talk about Kelvin Alps? You know, Kelvin Alps from the Aotearoa intervention, or AIF intervention, full on, you know, sitting there, did a piece on 60 Minutes about how these guys are already out to, you know, go and take out, go to war if necessary, and they're showing the big weapons in West Auckland, and, you know, so you want to turn around and crack down on white supremacists, and here's a guy who's only not that long ago been on 60 Minutes showing that he's got weapons. He comes from has mining dollars, he's wearing a fucking Masonic fucking ring. Hello, come on, you know you don't want to go there, because then you're going to start to have some very, very ugly questions, and it's all going to come back on you. Going back to Hugh Templeton and the Christchurch Foundation, you know. So the Christchurch Foundation partnered up with the Tel Aviv Foundation. Now you go online and you actually look at the Tel Aviv Foundation. They are an organisation that there is no way anybody can research the Tel Aviv Foundation and come back to me and say that they're a good stand-up organisation and that I'm being anti-Semitic, which, by the way, I'm not. My actual position on that situation is I do not believe in the Jewish banking conspiracy theory, simply because the symbolism is all wrong. If you look at the bull on Wall Street, it's not a Jewish symbol, it's actually a Canaan symbol, so you're actually talking about something that's actually Jewish, and a lot of the people in Israel that I've spoken to actually are aware of this as well, and they don't particularly like it either, but it's a really good way for them to get the blame for it. And that's, you know, this is my rule in life. Anybody asks me to hate somebody else, well, you can go get fucked, you know. I'm on for Planet Earth side, and the people down the road at Linwood Mosque, I'm out here to protect them as well, and not because they're Islamic or I am an Islamic sympathist. These people are my neighbours. That is my job, to protect them. I have a duty to protect them, and as long as they're under my watch, I don't care what religion they are, I will do that. And that makes me a white supremacist. Then, yeah, whatever. You know, I like to consider myself a human being, thank you very much. Who cares about other human beings, regardless of what their race, religion, colour, or sexuality may be? So yeah, that's the tip of the spear. You know, that's literally, when you look at who's funding the spear, that goes back to these guys. And you see around, look at their, KPMG had their money that was given to them from the Christchurch to think big. And at the same time, this is all going on. The year before, remember I talked about the person from Nectar moves in, and the Agenda 21. Well, the year before that moved in was when John Key changed all the tax laws for charities. And in that particular change, he didn't get away with it completely, because Jared Theobald, who's in a brilliant band called the Axemen, has another alias, but everyone knows him as Jared, was also worked for the Inland Revenue Department, and he noticed all this incredibly strange stuff going on, and he basically turned around, and what he noticed was that large, prominent Kiwis, the same people. And interesting, Jared is a man of incredible integrity. So when he was talking to me, even though he could see this, he wouldn't break his confidentiality oath. Yeah, it was against his code to do so. So he could only give me leads that I had to go and figure out myself. So his words was, there's prominent Kiwis that were donating to prominent overseas charities that were affiliated with highly influential American political names. Do I really need to tell you who which foundation that would be? Same foundation that's actually in bed with Stephen Jennings, who is the man that privatised came up with the architectural plan to privatise New Zealand's rails and basically remove a strategic. A country is made up of its strategic assets: ports, railways, roads, airports. This is what our governments consecutively, including this government, is consecutively been privatising and removing all the things that make us a nation. Literally, they wanted to change our flag. They wanted to turn around and sell off our ports. They wanted to turn around and they had sold off our electricity. So bit by bit, they are actually dismantling us as an actual entire people in a community, so that we are just slaves. That's it. And this is the whole point about global migration. It's so absolutely good. Global migration, again, the tip of the spear. I mean, the tip of the spear is the people. That's the people throwing the spear. And that's Michael Moore, who was the man that was the public relations man for Rogernomics, which came in to New Zealand in the 1980s. And one label gave us incredibly social, sound, feel-good stuff, nuclear fuel, which great, fantastic. But he only did that because he knew that's where the votes were. At the same time, he turned around and privatised it, and at the same time, he built up our SAS and our covert military forces, and at the same time, we spent $500 million building Waihopai, so we built it so that they could spy on us. So when you actually looked at the walk, did not match in the talk. It was Mike Moore's job to make sure that no one ever actually saw beneath the lolly wrappers about how they were being ripped off and sold away. And Mike Moore then turned around and left that little job, like so many of these people do. And I remember saying the deadline in 2003, 2005 maybe, I said the problem with Helen Clark is that she's so concentrated on building a career so that she gets into the UN that she's not looking at running the country. And everyone says, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, I am. I'm a very, very, very good one. Because look how that turned out. I'm in the library. I love it. It's a little bit of background noise there. And it's good. I love that sound. Noisy baby is the sound of a healthy baby. So yeah, Mike Moore turned around and left that team, went on to be the first UN envoy specialist for the global migration situation. And he tried to sell this idea of the global migration situation and the Codex Alimentis during when he became the director of the World Trade Organization in Seattle in 1999. And the result was that all the people who you could imagine today would have been marching against the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement back then, because it was basically the TPA was the same thing 2.0, turned around and said, fuck off, Mike, and they burned an effigy of him. Built a big picture that Mike Moore, down with Mike Moore in the streets of Seattle, for basically throwing rocks at fucking through Starbucks window while they were actually going, Mike, burn Mike, and he put that on the cover of his book, A World Without Borders. A World Without Borders, 1999. That's 20 years before the Christchurch situation comes and talking about the Global Migration Pact written on the weapon. And now those same people that marched against the TPA are going, global migration, it's good, we should all, we all embrace our brothers and we love each other, and going, well, no, you're not, guys, because what you're going to do is that when you read the fine print, actually what he's saying to you, if you look going back to his history of giving us the hugs at one level while he stabs us in the guts in the other, what he's basically doing is creating a a means of creating scab labour, so that basically they can come in and pay you $10, and you have to take it. So they don't, then they'll bring a whole bunch of people from England, Pakistan, or wherever to come and take those jobs. You might actually notice, if you look at all the ports that have been built around and all the security that's put in to these ports after 9/11, was that they were put in a way that was a joke. If you were a terrorist, you could jump in a rowboat, row around the back, game over. You know, what the actual function of them was to keep out protesters if they turn around and when they start to bring in the scab labour workforce. That's the second aspect of it, is with the Global Migration Pact, is it's going to be set up to make people go and work in places, whether they want to or not, take them out of their homes, so they have no homes, they have no sense of community, they have no point of being able to actually pull together and rally. They're just going to turn us into slaves, and that's literally what's going to occur. And right now, a lot of us out there are already working this out. Others out there going, oh no, that's not happening. I'm going to sit and look at my phone and just pretend everything's lovely. And it's not going to save you, you know. And it didn't save the people in 1939 when they were trying to ignore all the tanks and all the barbed wire and all the infrastructure that was slowly being put in place from 1937 to 1939. And some people got it, and some people didn't. And that's right now, I'm telling you, as a professional, intelligence-trained person with a degree in political science, degree in history, with 20 years of history behind me, researching for banks, for non-government organisations. I mean, that's what I do. I am a professional researcher, and I use methodology. And I'm telling you right now, this has all been set up as we are now a nation under occupation. Okay, and whether you accept your Gestapo or not is up to you. I don't, and so I will avenge. Mike Moore, 99, turn around it, and now the same people against the TPA, and now turn around and say, oh, it's all good, no, we should have global migration, you know, because they don't understand it, and they're not allowed to understand it because they actually trying to put forward laws that actually prevent people like me critiquing it. Just like Andrew Little has passed for a law saying that if a judge makes a judgment, we're not allowed to critique that judge and say that he's terrible, you can't accuse him of corruption. Same thing like Pike River. You're not allowed to accuse, under that law, you would not be allowed to accuse the people, the judges of their situation. Okay? So they're allowing you, taking away, they're making it illegal for you to have an opinion, or more importantly, to voice that opinion. Still don't believe that we're in Nazi Germany? Well, I think we are. You know, I think that's the problem when we're talking about hunting for white supremacists, that we're actually not hunting for the right ones. You want to go to Humphrey Wollaston, you know? And of course the other thing was when Mike Moore was a former meat worker person. He was, you know, being in Christchurch and so I think it was Sydenham MP. We had lots of stuff happening with gangs at the time in Christchurch and skinheads. At the time, the National Front were actually you'd Carl Chapman from Christchurch, and he was at that particular time employed by the Christchurch City Council. Nobody has ever asked how the hell did it, you know, so they go, oh, you know, we better watch out for white supremacists, you know, they're hiding out amongst us. They always were there, okay? That's a myth, okay? Then you got the whole situation of the, as I've said before, the National Front, okay? They were getting, at that time under Bulger's government, I think it was between 30 and 90,000, so we'll call it 40,000. $40,000 a year from the Prime Minister's office for crime prevention. And of course, you know what happened? Every time that Labour looked bad, or every time there was something terrible going on, you know, mysteriously there would be a skinhead incident, and something, or a gang incident, and suddenly we were talking about that, and they would forget about that thing that they were criticising Labour about beforehand. So when you start to look at Christchurch and you look at the people and the strategies, going, I think we've been here before. In fact, I know we've been here before. Yeah. And going back to this thing about Tel Aviv Foundation, while I am not against the Jewish conspiracy, I fully believe that there was a clique of military-industrial aspect people which involve aspects of Israel, which are part of this, you know, cartel, which is made up of all sorts of people. It's got Islamic people on it, probably, you know, but in this case, it is interesting to note from an organisational commentary basis that you look at Christchurch. Well, the last Christchurch earthquake, you had the incident where there were the Israeli agents were found in Christchurch, and a friend of mine met them, and he doesn't believe that they were agents, and you know, he spoke to them, so maybe that's an opinion that has to be taken on board. But the guys that certainly came to get their bones, when you look to their, you know, resume and CV, you know, they actually said they were ex-Mossad. And the other aspect of the situation is that you know, emergency workers normally don't carry guns, and if you actually read the public source situation, whatever that was being downplayed, it was very, very clear that that situation, weapons were drawn from both sides, and there was a standoff, which I think is incredibly interesting. It's like, and it confirms everything. After that point, you just go, I don't care you don't, but look at read your own writing. And at the same time that occurred was you had the situation at Auckland University where again, and all of that was about identity theft, which somehow I think does link into Christchurch. And I think when I look at the Linwood situation, and I'm going to shoot a video afterwards here, and I'm going to walk you through from the directional situation why, so I'm going to confirm to you why. To me, it proves that the people that were killed in Linwood were killed. It proves to me that it was definitely an event occurred, that there wasn't any fabrication. It's just, there isn't even out open for debate for me on that aspect of it. When you get to the Al Noor Mosque, there are inconsistencies and things which just don't add up. And my overall professional opinion is that it's like watching a magician do a trick, and you know you've been fooled, but you just can't quite work it out in your mind what the illusion is. And that's almost the thing. I think the problem I'm seeing when I look at the Al Noor Mosque is that my brain works logically and it wants to work things, and there's something about the illusion knows the way the brain works, and that's what it's counting on us to do. Trying not to do what your brain's hardwired to do is bloody difficult, but we'll go and investigate that one down the road as well. Okay, and then you get into situations like, I forgot there was another on that Berlin Flats yes, 53 minutes and 54 seconds. So there was another little device that's actually at the back of St Margaret's Hospital that's basically like measuring the atomic clock. I think it does it collectively again, which is something that Owen Welch talked about. They've always been very, it's like getting the time has to be precise, not even 0.001. There's something about what's happening going on there that's an important part of it. So this if you can is like the timing device of all these things. Once that goes click, then the rest of it all kicks in. And that's at the back of St Margaret Hospital, and that's based in a little cabin which during World War II was actually this is during the Christchurch where they had the armed defenders exercise. During World War II, this tunnel actually went through a cabin, up through a series of stairwells to John Crackrove's, who was one of the big guys in Christchurch at the time, his big estate. And it turns out that they had built an entire secret facility under that situation, and today the official narrative states that cabin is like, the stair was being decommissioned and they let you in once a year to see what's going on, so you can see there's nothing there. Bullshit. I am fully convinced there is that if you go up to the top of where the Croft estate was and you look at where the old big houses are, that's where I'll start, and you'll start to look to find out where the other little players actually are. And then these are the people that are driving through the front door. Hi, I'm going home. And hi, see, make a big noise. I'm here. It's my alibi. And then you can go down to the cabins and then come out from some many other places. We've only been shown a fraction of that tunnel. And interesting enough too, by the way, that John Craftco, he brought in a guy called Old Wazza. Old Wazza was the first Islamic person, New Zealand citizen in New Zealand, and he was also involved in the building of the quarry of the Christchurch Press, which is interesting because that actually is a very Masonic ritual in the sense of that you actually bring the pagans, actually turn around and build the temple. And I said that when we're talking about Solomon's temple, this is the religion that Solomon was worshipping in secret while professing to be Jewish, but in actual fact he was following his bloodline back to the patriarchal side of things, which makes him a Canaan, or this, there's some pre-Egyptian based. Canaan was a sub nation of the Egyptian Empire basically, and Canaan, Baal was their god, and Baal was the god of agriculture, thus the golden calf, and also the god of cunning and deceit. So in their rituals, the pagans were always the ones that actually built the pyramids, and it was part of the whole ritual. And then there will also be a drowning, which again, if you go back and look at the event in March 15, there have been some very drownings, and it actually turns out there have been a lot of drownings out by that hospital. And some people turn around and say, oh yes, well there's a mental hospital there. That's fine, but some of them aren't. And also you would think after the second drowning that would become story, and that somebody would step in and create things, measures and protocols, because when you keep doing it again and again, it's if it's not murder, then it's complete fucking incompetence. you know, and on that scale of repetition of how long it's gone on for, I'm not. That's another sub file on its own. I have a little cluster of people, and I think that file's going to do nothing but grow. And I may have to even subcontract it actually and get a team onto that one, because there's a lot of people going there. Anyway, I'm digressing. That was the other thing that was on the arm, which of course, on March 15th when I went around lifting up rocks, and I get to this, and I didn't know about that. I just went to the hospital to check it out. Yep, found out yes, there was an exercise there. They had me regularly, and then got home, and the place was saying, said, "Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I used to go and play in the secret tunnel." I went, "Secret tunnel? What?" Then I looked up and discovered that no, actually this thing actually is there. So that's an hour of me talking to you about what I'm going to be doing in Christchurch this week. And quite seriously, guys, right now I'm struggling like hell, like we all actually are, but I'm going to need a bit of help out there. So if anybody does want to donate to the cause, have a look at the bottom of the website. And all my details are there on the page. And anything at the stage is great. And what you'll be paying for is you will be paying for my time to do this, because it takes up time and stops me from actually being able to make a living, which at the moment I really need, because my bills are mounting up. But other than that, what you'll be paying for this, you'll be paying for me to actually get my shoes replaced, because I have literally worn the bottom of them actually off. You will be paying for me to actually get some camera equipment and upgrade that material there, because I think I do need to get some more stuff. I'm finding it very difficult to get the material and download it quickly enough. And you'll be paying for me to actually also go and get some massage and some medical attention, because I actually permanently live with a dislocated TMJ, and when I'm doing this stuff, it knocks the crap out of me. So I really am, and I'm in a lot of pain at the moment, and that's not a poor me situation, because you get to the point where you just go, hey, get on with it anyway. But that is the reality. So those are the things that you'll be paying for. And if you've got this far down the rabbit hole with me for an hour now and 59, 15, 16, 18 seconds, then I'm sure that you probably found that this quite interesting, fascinating. And if you want more of it, then we're going to need somebody out there to put in their pocket and send something to me, because this is what I do for a living, and without your aid I can't do it. I think that's it. So pretty much, and then I've put my biggie bowl out there. I'll give you all information. I'm going to go and get on to find out what's happening down in Wellington and why the railway station has been shut down. God help everything that's not another stage 2, because they're going to keep coming harder and faster. It's going to get more and more faster and faster the closer they get towards the end game. In the meantime, this is Ben Vidgen from Ben's World Deadline TV. You can catch me on Saturday mornings on Fresh FM, on Thursdays, which is also on the podcast. Go to postmanproductions.wordpress.org, or add Ben's World and you'll find my post there. Or you can check me out on Facebook, Ben Vidgen. The first name is Ben, it's B-E-N, Celtic for mountain. The Vidgen is V for Victor, I-D-G-E-N. 3 first letters of video, the first 3 letters of the word general. I am the video general. And that name, by the way, means anglicized into Sea Eagle. So I am the mountain Sea Eagle, reporting live from Ben's World. See you later on. Bye.